بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون صدق الله العظيم. My dearest respected brothers and sisters in Islam, first and foremost, I'd like to extend my gratitude to Maulana Musa Sahab for reaching out and giving me this opportunity to deliver this very important webinar. Um, just to let people know, I've been serving as an Imam for the last 8.5 years, and I've never done a webinar, by the way. So I generally have my public before me. So there's a level of interaction. So this is something new for me, but inshallah, I'm sure I'll get used to it over the next couple of weeks, inshallah. And I hope it's beneficial for each and every single one of you as well, inshallah. I delivered something very similar in my local masjid as well, wherein I serve as an imam. And the reason this came up was, just to give a background, was that some time ago I was on social media, I was on Twitter, and within one day I saw so many people slandering these great ai these great um, giants in Islam, these great revered individuals, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala, laymen who are actually criticizing him. So I thought, it's important that we understand, okay, although there may be differences in our fiqh, but it's important that we have that mutual love for each of these imams, and we learn about them. The more we learn about an individual, the more that we will appreciate who they were. If we appreciate and if we look into their lives and we look into their legacies, look into their methodologies, we'll realize each and every single one of them was amazing in their own right as well. And I went to one of my Asatiza Ikram, Hazrat Mufti Ibrahim Sahab, and he gave me the mashwara as well that, inshallah, you should comment something on the four imams. So I do hope that, inshallah, is beneficial. And I do hope that you can stay with us until the very end, the last session of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, because you realize today's session is like an introductory session, where, inshallah, we'll have a quick overview, dealing with some of the major contentions, the criticisms, and try and clarify some of those issues. And also we'll have an introduction into Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Remember, these were great sincere individuals. So we look into their lives, their personal lives, their virtues, their qualities, their different approaches to life, and you realize that each and every single one of them, just like the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een, they were all different. The way their approach to politics was, the way their approach to wealth was, the way they would teach, the leeway that they would give, how they were approachable. Some weren't as approachable than others. Some were much easier going than others as well. They were all different. And we'll also realize, also in today's session as well, how all four schools of thought, they're all interlinked as well. But before that, just one or two things. I would encourage note taking, inshallah. So if you can take some notes, it would be really beneficial, inshallah. And before we actually commence as well, it's important that we understand a few terminologies. So just get this on. Many times you will hear, when you have a conversation in regards to the four imams, maybe in your workplaces, maybe with individuals, you'll hear a few words. You'll hear something called taqleed. You'll hear something called someone called a muqallid. You'll hear someone called a ghair muqallid. And you might also hear of ijtihad and mujtahid. So before we actually commence and go into introducing the four imams, inshallah, we will go into these terms because it's important, because each and every single one of us, I hope, we are muqallids. We do taqleed. So what is taqleed? So taqleed is an Arabic word. It stems from the root word qallada yuqallidu taqleedan, um, which means to place a collar around the neck of an individual. Okay, so in essence, what it means is that the muqallid, so you and I, we are muqallids. We do taqleed. We entrust our affairs to the one that we are performing taqleed of. It's like someone being led by a collar, so to speak. And in its religious or in its legal sense, it is قبول قول الغير من غير حجة. that to accept the opinion of someone without a proof. This is in essence what it is. Where a muqallid, they ascribe to the taqlid of a mujtahid. So because I lack qualification, maybe yourselves, you lack qualifications to perform ijtihad ourselves. And what's ijtihad? Ijtihad is actually the process of extracting laws from the four basic sources of Sharia. So you've got Quran, you've got the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you've got ijma', the consensus of opinion, and you've got qiyas, a logical analogy, using the Quran and the Sunnah. So now a person might ask, um, who is a mujtahid? A mujtahid, who is a mujtahid? Who can do ijtihad? Can I do ijtihad, or can a lay person do ijtihad? It's not that simple. A mujtahid, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala, whom we will learn about in the last week, he was asked a question that who is a mujtahid? So Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi was asked that if a person memorizes 100,000 ahadith by heart, imagine 1,000 ahadith by heart, not only the ahadith, but the actual chain of narration as well. Will he become a faqih? Will he become a mujtahid? So Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi said no. So the person asked them, what if he memorizes 200,000 ahadith? Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi said no. So what about 300,000? Said no. So what if he memorizes 400,000 ahadith? So Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi indicated with his hand that it's possible. It's possible. Okay. Now, just Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi would actually consider, and I'll mention this closer to the end as well, because this is one of the major contentions in regards to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, that was he a mujtahid or not. Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi would actually consider Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi to be a mujtahid as well. So a mujtahid is someone who, in essence, he extracts the laws from the Quran and the Sunnah. They extrapolate the laws from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, is it an innovation? Is it bid'ah? You see people coming out that, you know what, brother, you shouldn't do taqleed. Again, we'll come to this closer to the end, but they say, you shouldn't do taqleed. It's not proven in the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so let's look in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Fas'alu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun." That if you don't know, then ask the people who know, ask the people of knowledge. And this is a general rule in all walks of life. When a person is sick, a person is not going to go to the mechanic, they're going to go to the doctor. Likewise, when a person's car breaks down, they're going to go to the mechanic, not to the doctor. Likewise, in the field of our beautiful deen, a person cannot place their reliance blindly on any layman, on any Tom, Dick, and Harry. Rather, we go to those people, the pious individuals, the righteous individuals, the reliable individuals, those authorities. Okay, and this is why we have these great imams as well. We are muqallids. We have placed our trust entirely without any proof. We placed our confidence in the field of ilm, in the field of knowledge, as per the instruction of the Quran. So what about from the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a woman who actually inquired from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, Ya Rasulullah, who should I follow? After your demise, we come to you right now, who should we follow after you? So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied that you should go to Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Again, this is a proof from the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he dispatched Sayyiduna Muaz ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu to Yemen. It's a famous incident. So the people of Yemen, they followed him. They made taqleed of him in all matters pertaining to the deen. Now, Hazrat Muaz radiallahu ta'ala anhu, they didn't have cell phones at the time, they didn't have internet. He couldn't email Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he couldn't text Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he couldn't call Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they were muqallids of Sayyiduna Muaz ibn Jabal radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So whilst he was in Yemen, if any new problem came about, how was the decision made? Okay, he would look at the Quran and the sayings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whatever he had heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So would we say that the people of Yemen, they were involved in some kind of shirk, some kind of bid'ah? No, this was taking place in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Likewise, it took place after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the time of the Sahaba, in the time of the Tabi'un and the Tabu'ut Tabi'un. Imam Bukhari actually, he mentions a narration from Hazrat Ikrimah radiallahu ta'ala anhu that the people of Medina, they asked Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So they came to Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu and they asked him that there's a woman that during Hajj, so she's in Hajj and she's performing her tawaf, and just during her first tawaf, she enters into her menstrual period. So before she can actually make her final tawaf. So Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anh told him that, you know what, she could go home without completing her final tawaf. So the people of Medina, what did they say? This response, they said, we will not take your opinion over the opinion of Hazrat Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And it's clear from here, from this exchange between the people of Medina and Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that at that time they were making taqleed of Sayyidina Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So this was just an introduction in regards to these few terms. So you got taqleed, you got, so those people who in essence don't follow a school of thought, they would deem themselves as ghair muqallid, and we deem them as ghair muqallid, those who do not place their trust in someone, those who do not follow a school of thought. So these are ghair muqallid. Taqleed is the actual is entrusting our trust onto someone in its entirety. Now, the Muslim Ummah, majority of the Muslim Ummah, for whatever reason, has some kind of, you can say, connection, some kind of affinity with one of these four schools of thought at some level or another. And you know, it's amazing that to say that after 12 to 13 centuries, after so many years, you know, they weren't all contemporaries, okay? But after so many years, you know, people are still being influenced by these individuals. You know, there was no agreement that the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm going to choose these people, or I'm going to choose Imam Abu Hanifa as a person, as a faqih. No, it wasn't like that. Okay, we find that Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi, he was born in the year 80 after Hijrah. So this is in essence 70 years after the demise of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's still in the golden era. He's still very, very close to the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you've still got many companions who are still around. And this is why it's important to know that he is considered a tabi'i. He is considered a tabi'i from amongst these four imams. Okay, a tabi'i meaning someone who met one of the Sahaba, who met someone from the Sahaba in the state of Iman as well. So he is the only one considered from Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayh, out of these 3 and 4, and Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, he is actually considered to be a tabi'i. And ulama say that he met at least one companion, but he met, some ulama say he met several companions, maybe 7 to 8 companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one companion he's certain to have met is Sayyiduna Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So Imam Abu Hanifa, he was born in the year 80 after Hijrah in Kufa. Okay, and close to Kufa is a place called Basra. And Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu was residing there. Who was Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu? A great companion. Okay, he was like the PA of Rasulullah. He was a personal attendant, assistant of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the age of 10. Okay, he would reside in the house for 10 years. He says this in a hadith that for 10 years, Khadimtu Nabiya sallallahu alaihi wasallam 10 sinin, that I served the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for 10 years. Okay, and there's that famous hadith where he says that Nabi Sallam didn't say uff to me, he didn't say that why did you do this, why did you not do this. Okay, but he was very privy to the life of Rasulullah, to the lifestyle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was also fortunate to get one of the du'as of Nabi Sallam. And Nabi Sallam said to him that Allahumma akthir malahu wa waladahu, that oh Allah, increase his children, increase his wealth, and give him barakah in whatever he does. Wow, imagine he got the du'a of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because of this he lived for so long. He was the last Sahabi to pass away in Basra. He personally buried so many of his own children and his grandchildren who died before him as well. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, he actually met Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and there's also a possibility that he also transmitted directly from the noble companions radiallahu anhum ajma'in. Now, why are we talking about having met a Sahabi? Why is it important? Because as you know, there's a bit of a hierarchy in the early generations. So the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith that khayrul quruni qarni, or when narration khayru ummati qarni thumma alladhina yalunahum thumma alladhina yalunahum, that the best of you is my generation. Okay, which basically speaks about everyone who was with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the generation of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. So all of the companions, They are the best people. Okay? And then you've got the generations, 3 generations after him. خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. So this is 3 generations the Islam is talking about. So you can see there's a bit of a diminishing hierarchy. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een, that so Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have, we cannot come close to them. The tabi'un, those who came after the Sahaba, they cannot come close to the Sahaba in terms of their excellence, in terms of the qualities, because they actually, with their own eyes, they saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the state of Iman. And then you have those who came after them who are called the tabi'un, meaning the followers or the successors. And then you've got the third generation who are called the tabi'ut tabi'un. So the higher the generation of an individual, the higher their rank. So Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi was certainly a tabi'i from amongst these 4 imams. Now it's quite interesting because Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi is born only a few years after Imam Abu Hanifa, maybe within a decade or so after Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, but he was not considered a tabi'i, although Imam Malik was actually residing in Medina Munawwara. Imam Abu Hanifa is in Kufa, Iraq. And you got Imam Malik in Medina Munawwara, but by that time, Sahaba had spread out around the globe. And maybe all the Sahaba at that time in Medina Munawwara, they had passed away as well. So this was Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. And then Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, he eventually passed away in the year 150 after Hijrah. So just look, if you'll see how the 4 imams are actually connected here. So you've got Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, he passes away in the year 150 after Hijrah. Which means he was 70 years old when he passed away. And something very interesting is that 150 after Hijrah is the very same year that Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi was also born, to the extent some ulama go on to say that the very day that Imam Abu Hanifa passed away was the day that Imam Shafi'i rahimahullahu ta'ala was born. So you've got Imam Malik, who was born a little while after Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. So you can say that the actual contemporary, or the only contemporary of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, the only one of the imams that Imam Abu Hanifa met was Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi. And then you've got Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi, who was born in the year 150 after Hijrah, but he studies from a very young age, as we will learn in the next few sessions, that from the age of 6, 7, he starts to study. And Imam Malik by that time is old, but Imam Shafi'i actually goes to Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi in his old age, and he studies from Imam Malik. So you got Imam Abu Hanifa, he actually meets Imam Malik, then Imam Shafi'i studies from Imam Malik. And then you've got Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi, who comes later after that, and he studies under Imam al-Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi. The best teacher of Imam Ahmad was Imam Shafi'i, and the best student of Imam Shafi'i was Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi. So you can see that there's a bit of overlapping, and they're all interlinked as well, as we will see in the coming sessions as well, inshallah ta'ala. Now, a question arises that why these 4 imams? Why do we follow them? Why do most people have a relationship with them? What is it? Like, it wasn't that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you know what, there's these 4 people that are going to come after you and you're going to follow them. Okay, the fiqh that is basically considered to be the fiqh of the Muslim Ummah, it relates to these 4 individuals. But there were many other imams at that time as well. It wasn't only that, there was only Imam Abu Hanifa, or there was Imam Malik, or there was Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi. There were many other imams as well. So what did they do? What did these 4 imams do? What were they primarily known for? So what these 4 essentially did was they codified the Sharia. They codified the Sharia, the jurisprudence. So essentially, you had the Quran and you had the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you had the Quran verses coming down. You had the Quran verses, and then you had the Sunnah, the Ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they had to be distilled. They had to be, you have to extract rulings from them, because not everything is so clear cut in the Quran and the Ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, people would need answers to them. So what these imams in essence were doing was they were analyzing these traditions, analyzing the Quran, analyzing the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and formulating rulings for us. Because in the time of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was very simple. Okay, there was one authority, and that was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, Nabi sallallahu was very approachable, very, very approachable. He didn't have any bodyguards. So if Sahaba had a question, and they were thinking about something, they had a ruling they needed to ask, they could easily approach Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you could ask him, and the questions were posed to him, and that was the only authority at the time. You had the Quran as explained by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There was no need for a difference of opinion at the time, because the Shari', the legislator, i.e. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was there, he was present. And any difference that Sahaba may have if they were on a journey somewhere else, any difference they may have had, it was short-lived, because very soon it would be clarified by the Prophet of Allah sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam. Now, after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahaba would speak. They would have conversations with each other, and one would say, it should be done this way, it should be done that way, as we see today. So, just to give you an example, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told someone. So there was two Sahaba. So one Sahabi asked Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam about a ruling in terms of kissing the wife whilst fasting. Okay. So to one Sahabi, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that it's permissible for you to kiss your wife whilst you're fasting. And just to clarify, this is just a normal kiss, not the exchange of saliva. So now this Sahabi will now go and practice this, and he will spread this to other individuals. Okay. Another Sahabi was told by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam that it's prohibited to kiss whilst fasting. So now how do you reconcile? Okay. So this is where, if a person just opens, they say that, study Bukhari only. Alhamdulillah, we've had the chance as ulama to study the entire Sahih al-Bukhari as well. Now, if you open Sahih al-Bukhari, a person will be confused, because within one chapter, within one tarjumatul bab, within one chapter, you will have so many ahadith. One thing will say something, and something else, there'll be an apparent contradiction within the hadith. Obviously, Sahaba are relating according to what they heard, what they were told by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how can you look and get your answers? So, there needs to be some kind of, this is why there are massive commentaries for Sahih al-Bukhari in 18 to 20 volumes. You've got Ibn Hajar Asqalani, you've got Qastalani, and you've got Aini, all of these commentaries of Sahih al-Bukhari. So going back to that example, when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells one Sahabi that you can kiss your wife, he tells another Sahabi that you can't kiss your wife. So then how do you reconcile? And this is where you need the fuqaha and you need the jurists, that how they're going to extrapolate the rulings, how they're going to analyze the traditions, they're going to analyze the Quran, they're going to analyze the saying of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and formulate a ruling. So it's very simple. So the individual, the Sahabi whom Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to that it's prohibited, he was young. He was a young man. He was just newly married. And if a person at that stage, he kisses his wife, then it's possible that one thing will lead to another. It will lead to other stages of intimacy. And the other individual who's a veteran in marriage, a kiss isn't going to harm him. This is why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had no issues with that. Okay, so for these kind of rulings, you require a mujtahid. Now, during the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, you had Sahaba who then moved out of Medina Munawwara. They went to different parts around the globe. There were many in Kufa. This is why Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi got to meet a few of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, and they began to teach, and people started to flock to them. So this is how it worked. From the time of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you had the Sahaba. Now Sahaba spread around the globe. They spread the teachings, and now people are coming to them. So you had people studying under Sahaba radiallahu anhu. You had Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was in Kufa. And then, from their students, some people become more renowned, more famous, because of maybe abilities given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remember in the UK, we used to have our Hazrat Moulana Yusuf Mutala Nawwarallahu Marqadahu. And, from his students, so obviously many people have graduated from the Darul Uloom, but some become more prominent within the UK, and some become more famous. So like this, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala also become quite famous. People would then flock to him, people would consult him on issues. And at that time as well, there were many other scholars, great scholars. They weren't just like any laymen. No, they were amazing scholars, great scholars in their own right, who were doing exactly what these four Imams are doing as well. Okay, so obviously they weren't all contemporaries, they all came at different times. So you had different schools of thought, and all of them had their own school of thought as well. You had the likes of Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullahu ta'ala. He had his own school of thought. He had his own madhab. You had Sharik ibn Abdullah Nakhai. He had his own madhab. You had Ibn Hazm Zahiri, Dawood Zahiri. Okay, Dawood Zahiri, Ibn Hazm Zahiri. They like you can say the literalists. So obviously their madhab wouldn't survive anyway. So just to give an example of the Zahiriya, these literalists. So this was their school of thought, the literalists. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in one hadith says that la tabulu fil ma'i, that do not urinate in water. Obviously for obvious reasons, because it's going to contaminate the water, it's going to pollute it, and others can't others can't use it, and obviously the impurity isn't going to flow away. So the Zahiris, they thought, the literalists, they thought, you know what? Nabi Sassam said you can't urinate in it. He didn't say you can't defecate in it. So you know what? It's fine. You can use it if someone defecates in it. So these are literalists. Obviously, that's not going to survive because, it doesn't make sense at all. So, and even in today's day and age, unfortunately, people are trying to go back to that approach as well. So you had these great scholars. You had Imam al-Awza'i, rahimahullah ta'ala. There was no greater person in Asham than Imam al-Awza'i, rahimahullah. He was like just like Imam Abu Hanifa was in Kufa. He was one of the main people in Kufa. Imam al-Awza'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, was like the Imam of Syria. And then you had Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, you had Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, who was born in Gaza and then went to Makkah Mukarramah. He ends up in Egypt. And then you had Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. You had someone by the name of Layth ibn Sa'ad, rahimahullah ta'ala, another great Imam. You had a great mu'arrikh, you had a great mufassir, a historian, and a great mufassir by the name of Imam Abu Ja'far al-Tabari, rahimahullah ta'ala. But all of these madhabs were there at the time. They all had their own schools of thought, just like Imam Abu Hanifa, just like Imam Malik, just like Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullahi alayhi. But what happened? Unfortunately, their madhabs did not survive. The madhabs did not endure until maybe a few years or until later on. So what is a madhab? Okay, what's a madhab and how does it survive? Okay, so essentially a madhab is a school of law, is a particular school of law that these scholars, like I've mentioned, they looked at the Quran, hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they extrapolated a body of masail, a body of rulings. So all of these, like I said, these imams were doing exactly what Imam Abu Hanifa was doing in Kufa. However, slowly, as the years moved on, it became that the majority of the people, they became linked to these individuals, these four, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Ash-Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullahi alayh. And eventually it just became normal and the practice of everyone who learned fiqh to learn it under one of these umbrellas, either under the Shafi'iyya, Hanabila, Ahnaf, or the Shafi'iyya. And this was only until around 200 years ago where you got this, you got the dismantling of the traditional system, as we will come to. So what they were in essence doing was they were taking the Quran and the Sunnah and they were processing masail for each and every single one of them. And this is how these four essentially developed. Now, for anything I say, I either have to write a book or I have to teach several people. I have to, spread that knowledge that I've got. Otherwise, what's going to happen is that knowledge that I have got is going to die with me. And it's quite a natural thing. So you're either going to have to write a book, or you're going to have to give seminars, deliver speeches. You're going to have to be influential enough that people are going to pick it up and, spread your thoughts. So essentially for these imams, that didn't happen, meaning these other imams, unfortunately, their schools of thought then died away later on because they didn't have that many students who didn't continue their teachers' basically school of thought and their laws. So their madhabs did not endure. Whereas Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad, rahmatullahi alayhi, at different degrees, their madhabs have endured until today. So, you might ask, what's the secret of the Imam Abu Hanifa's school of law enduring until today? And it's very simple. You've got two great students of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi. You've got one is Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, and you've got Imam Abu Yusuf, rahimahullah ta'ala. By the way, I'm not trying to make it too technical. I'm trying to keep it as easy as possible. Inshallah, in the next few sessions, it won't be as technical. It's just because it's an introductory session. I can understand that it can sometimes get a bit technical, but inshallah, the next few sessions will be mainly talking about the virtues of these individuals. So, you got two people who were the secret, you can say the secret to success behind the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa. You got Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. Imam Muhammad, he wrote a number of books. Okay. Now, once you collect something in a book format, it lasts for longer. And number two is that, he studied from Imam Abu Hanifa when he was young. So he really spread his teacher's knowledge. He probably had the ability to have his own madhab at the time. He actually differed on around 15 to 20% of the masail, but he had great love for his teacher and he really, really spread the knowledge of his teacher. And then you had Imam Abu Yusuf, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he was, the reason why it really spread through Imam Abu Yusuf was, he was made Harun Rashid's, so Harun Rashid, one of the Khalifas, um, he was made his Qadi al-Qudat. He was made his supreme judge. So, their rule spread far and wide, and he was sitting next to me in Baghdad. He was sitting next to Harun Rashid in Baghdad as well. So the Abbasids, they had a very special attachment to the Hanafi Maslak, obviously mainly due to Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi. So in essence, wherever they had a judge, they would have the madhab of the Hanaf there. And then later on as well, you have the Ottomans who came in rule for hundreds of years. Probably one of the longest ruling dynasties, 600 to 700 years. You have the Ottomans, and they were all primarily Hanafis, although they didn't actually enforce that school of thought on anyone. But obviously, when you've got the people and the main people and the rulers who are actually following a madhab, then generally the awam and the general public will also follow that school of thought. So if you see this now, this is not coming out of my back pocket, by the way, that how many percentage are actually Hanafis in the world. This is just a rough estimate that some ulama have written. So this is the reason, because the rule of Hanaf, because of the Ottomans and because of the Abbasids, it spread far and wide. So you've probably got the overwhelming majority. If they are followers of a madhab, the majority are generally followers of the Hanafi school of thought, followed by the Maliki school of thought, which probably has, because a lot of North Africa, they're actually Maliki as well. There's a huge population there. Followed by the Shafi'i school of thought. Although the Shafi'i school of thought in the West seems to be probably a bit more than the Maliki school. And then after that, you've got the Hanbali school of thought, who are probably the smallest in amount of followers they have in that sense. Even though those who generally tend to be followers, there's very few. You can say there's very few actual ardent followers of the Hanbali school of thought. A lot of them tend to shift away in many masail as well. But that doesn't undermine the Hanafi, the Hanbali madhab at any level, or the Shafi'i madhab, or Maliki madhab, or Hanafi madhab. Rather, they were all amazing in their own right. All of these individuals, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullahi alayh, they were all amazing individuals, and the schools of thought as well. We have respect and we have mutual love for each and every single one of them. So now let's look at Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullah. I just want to set the scene for Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullah. So this Imam starts off, what makes him so popular? So you got one statement, and this is just amazing. It's mind-blowing. You got a statement of Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, which says, "An-nasu ayalun ala Abi Hanifa." That basically, in jurisprudence, everyone is dependent on Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. Now it's quite interesting. It's quite an amazing statement that he makes, despite the fact that he differs on so many masail from Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, but he clearly has respect. You see the respect that they had for for each other. He clearly praises him for this. He's got his own school of thought. He studies with Imam Malik, and his school is very different to Imam Malik as well. He's got his own mind. He's a thinker. But what makes him think that everyone, and what makes him say this, that everyone is dependent on Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayh? So to understand this, you got to understand that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayh, he was probably the first person responsible for the first codification work. Okay, you could probably say he was the first person to actually fill this gap. As Islam spread, he was the first person to fill this gap. So you can say he was born in the year 80 after Hijrah, and he probably starts doing his work later on, 90 or 100 years after the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he was the actual first person to codify it, to try and bring it together. And it's something unprecedented. No one is doing it at the time. So you have to be bold. You got to be confident. You got to be resolute to come forward and do something like that. Most of us are just followers. Okay, we'll just copy other people. We just like doing what other people do. But there's very few individuals who will actually go out there and do something different. And this is exactly what Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi, did. He went there, he was bold and he was resolute, and he thought, let me codify, let me start something off. And this is why it probably gave confidence to the other Imams after Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi, to also do what Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi. And that's only the tawfiq and the divine enablement from Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was the schools of thought. It's just an introduction to the schools of thought. And this was only until the last, you can say, 100 to 200 years. Last 100 to 200 years. Now, if we were to research our history, okay, of 1400 years. So of 1400 years, our history, our Islamic history, if you were to take away the first 150 years or the first 200 years, it's after that the madhahib, they actually spread, they proliferated, and you had, different madhahib after that. If I was to ask that, if you were to give me, maybe 2, 3 names of scholars that you have heard, not in the past 100 or 200 years, then, you'll realize that they all had a madhab. I don't know if anyone wants to type in, if anyone wants to type, they can anyone think of any madhahib, any scholars between the year 200 after Hijrah until the last 200 years? I'd just like to see. And then, 5 famous scholars that you've heard about after Imam Bukhari, etc. Anyone wants to type in, or is everyone too shy? No one's typing. That's fine. Okay, so you've got the likes of Imam Ghazali, okay? If you hear these names, Imam Ghazali, Imam Qurtubi, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah is heard that is a name that flies around, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahmatullahi alayh. If you look at all of these big names or big players, Ibn Khaldun, mashallah. So all of these, Ibn Khaldun and Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir, they all were ascribed to a school of thought. So you've got the likes of, Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, was a student of Ibn Taymiyyah, rahmatullah, both from Damascus. But they all had, Imam Ghazali, who's wrote the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, he was a Shafi'i, although he differed on a few masail in the Shafi'i school of thought, but he was a Shafi'i. Like Imam Qurtubi, his tafsir is so famous. He was a Maliki scholar. Likewise, you got Ibn Kathir and Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah was a Hanbali. Okay, so they actually followed a school of thought. And you'd find it very, very difficult until the last maybe 100 or 200 years for a person not to follow a madhab, not to follow a school of thought. And then now you've got individuals who are unfortunately coming forward, and it's like, I'd call it a movement, okay, where they're saying, what's his madhab business? Why are you following a madhab, brother? It's bid'ah. Akhi, it's bid'ah. What are you doing? So you call it the dismantling of the traditional system. That everyone has a right to do what they want, to follow who they want, okay? And you got people saying that no, don't follow the 4 madhabs. And you might, unfortunately, many people fall into this trap. And this is why it's important that we understand this as well. That a person, especially when you're in your workplaces, you come across people from all backgrounds, or you're in university, or you're in college, or you're in school, and you'll come across different individuals. And this is happening within our universities as well. I've heard of in incidents as well. People who have come to me and they've mentioned that, this is what's happening in the university, that someone's saying that you don't need to do this. And that, why are you following a madhab? Why are you following this is bid'ah. Nabi Sam didn't say you got to follow these individuals. You follow the Quran and the Sunnah, akhi. As though the 4 madhabs have nothing to do with the Quran, and it's just a propaganda, and we just end up, falling for it. So my question is that, did the Imams who codified the Sharia, what did they use? Did they not use the Quran and Sunnah? Did they just wake up one morning and think, I'm gonna make my own madhab and that's it? No. So let's take, for example, tomorrow I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna look at the Quran and Sunnah. So because they're saying that, look at the Quran and the Sunnah, okay? So tomorrow I'm going to pick up Sahih al-Bukhari. But most of these individuals, they don't know Arabic, by the way. So they'll pick up a translation of Sahih al-Bukhari. And they're going to try and understand. Like I said, Sahih Bukhari is crazy because you open it and then you got there's an apparent contradiction between the ahadith. So because they don't know Arabic now, one of our teachers used to say that although they say they're غير مقلد, they're actually following now the translation of Bukhari as well. So now let me start trying to understand these and then let me look at the hadith. Okay, so this is me. So I'm telling because they're telling me to follow the Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to open the translation of Sahih Bukhari. Let me try understanding how I must pray and how I must do things. Now, guess what? When I come up with my prayer, when I come up with my salah, from what I have understood from the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I reach a conclusion which is different to what these people say. Who actually say that, you know what, you shouldn't follow the four madhahib, you shouldn't follow these schools of thought, rather, brother, you should follow the Quran and the Sunnah. And I presented to them that, look, I've looked at the Quran, I've looked at the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I've come up with this conclusion. You know, tomorrow they will still not accept it. Why? Because it's not in accordance to what the Imams have said. And although they say it's from the Quran and Sunnah. So if you look at this purely, if you look at this sincerely, if you look at this with an open mind, they're not actually calling towards Quran and Sunnah. They're actually calling to an extra madhab. Okay? Because they're never going to agree with whatever you come up with because it's not in accordance to what the ulama have said. It's not maybe in accordance to what Sheikh Albani said or Sheikh bin Baz said or Sheikh Uthaymeen said. So it's not in accordance to that. Now, my question is that why should I um you know why should I give up my Mercedes for a Turan or something, you know? That's why I've got outside, by the way. So like, why should I take what someone of the past 100 years has said uh against these great ulama ikram who actually looked at the tradition, who actually spent their day and night looking at the Quran and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, someone can come forward today and they can look at the Sunnah and they can look at the Quran and look at the whole corpus of hadith and develop a method. That's absolutely fine. Okay, he can do that. However, what's the validity of it? The problem is that a person is just dealing with just theory. Okay, he's just dealing with these raw narrations. And you got to understand what the Imams were dealing with. Okay, they were dealing with the manifestation of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam before their very eyes. So Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, as you learn in the third session, Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, he had something called Amalu Ahli al-Madina. He had the practice of the people of Medina in front of him. So when he was confused about a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would look at the practice of the people of Medina. You had Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, who was dealing with the hadith, but in light of the Sahaba and the heritage of the Sahaba that he inherited from them, because he saw Sahaba and he saw the children of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in. So he was seeing Islam practiced by the noble companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. Now we're so many 1400 years later. Today you can only look at hadith. You can't see the manifestation of the hadith before us. You know, hadith are not as simple. You know, if it was as simple, there would be no reason for ulama to then write, you know, these crazy, you know, long commentaries on these books of hadith. So you got in, you know, for Sahih al-Muslim, you got so many commentaries, and for Sahih al-Bukhari, like I said, you got multiple commentaries. And just for one hadith, there are multiple contradictions as well. That Nabi Sallallahu said one thing, but then he said this. Like we mentioned, the example of when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to an individual that you can kiss the wife whilst fasting, and to another Sahabi he said you can't kiss the wife. So we need these ulama. So these, in essence, what these ulama did was they burnt their night fuel for us to make life easy for us today. And they did that in light of seeing the manifestation of the ahadith before them. So when you have these people saying that, Akhi, don't follow Quran, I mean, don't follow the four madhab, this is bid'ah, you know, follow the Quran and follow the Quran and Sunnah. In essence, they're not calling towards the Quran and the Sunnah. They're actually calling to, you could say, an extra madhab, okay, of the Imams. So it's important that we understand this. And finally, before I finish, today's session is just a bit shorter, inshallah, and we will make over in the next few sessions. Just one more criticism we find regarding Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. Remember, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi, he would consider Imam Abu Hanifa a mujtahid. He would consider Imam Abu Hanifa a faqih. And they say, especially regarding the Hanafi, so it's just an introduction to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, just one of the major contentions that we find. They say that your fiqhi issues are based on weak narrations. Imam Abu Hanifa didn't know hadith. He only knew 17 ahadith, etc., etc. And especially they target the Hanafis when they say that your fiqhi issues are based on weak narrations. And now the question is that Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi passed away in the year 150 after Hijrah. Imam Bukhari comes later on. He passed away in the year 256 after Hijrah. That's like 116 years after Imam Abu Hanifa actually passed away. And Imam Muslim passed away in the year 261 after Hijrah. So it's like two generations between Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. Now, this might be a bit technical for some individuals, but here, most of the ahadith which are in Sahih al-Bukhari, you get some which are khumasiyat. Okay, so you got Imam Bukhari who narrates from his teacher, and there's like four people between him and Rasulullah sallallahu, five people between him and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is khumasiyat, and you got some which are rubai. You got four people between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Imam Bukhari, and there are very few which are thulathiyat, where there are three. Now, a narration that was sahih in the second generation or the third generation, or in the generation of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, may have later become weak because of the fourth and the fifth narrator. So Imam Abu Hanifa took a hadith maybe from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, or from another sahabi, and at that time it was sahih, so he practiced on it. But later on, after Imam Abu Hanifa passed away, then this one of maybe the narrator after that, or the fourth or fifth narrator, he was weak, he was a da'if individual. So the hadith at the time of Imam Hanifa could have been sahih. Hence, we don't reject da'if hadith totally as well. The madhab, or the school of thought, you say, was developed before that. So you're actually judging a madhab, you're judging a school of thought based on the criteria of the hadith scholars that came after. You can see how absurd that actually sounds as well. So these are just a few points, and as an introductory session, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it has been beneficial. I did tell Moulana that I will not, if there's any questions, I will take them. You can email them to me, inshallah, or you can email Ilm Seeker Academy. Just see outside the format. How would you question? So inshallah, what I'll do, if anyone has any questions, if you can email them to ilmseekeracademy@gmail.com, or my personal email. Yeah, the email's here. And inshallah, what I'll do, I'll clarify these issues in the next session, inshallah ta'ala. And inshallah, in the next session, we'll continue, and we'll start with Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi, the legacy of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi. And, you'd be amazed. The life of these individuals, they were so, they were all beautiful in their own right. They were all wonderful in their own right. Their lives were amazing. The methodology was amazing as well. So I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He first of all gives myself the tawfiq, and Allah reward you all. I know it's a Sunday morning, it's very cold outside, mashallah, you all made that sacrifice to sit for these few moments. Pray Allah ta'ala give us the tawfiq, give myself the tawfiq to do amal. Like I said, if there are any questions, or if you didn't understand anything, please do email it, inshallah, and I will clarify these issues for you, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khairah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.